All right. Remember, of course, tonight another story that has been quite big throughout the course of the day are the developments around the televangelist Timothy Omotoso. We saw him being acquitted in court a little earlier on, much to the dismay of some activists as well as some of the survivors who've been watching the developments there. And before we go to Lerato Fekisi, who has been tracking this particular story for us, I'm not sure if we do have those graphics of the timeline of how things have been as far as this particular trial is concerned. You have from the 20th of April 2017, the Hawks arresting Timothy Omotoso in Port Elizabeth at the international airport there on charges of rape and human trafficking. Fast forward, you're looking at a 2018 where the Supreme Court of Appeal dismisses the bid for the judge's recusal in that particular trial. And this was one of the big issues because you remember at the time they were talking about a judge that is in fact conflicted, and they wanted him to recuse himself from this particular matter, and saying that for them they don't feel comfortable with his presence there. In July 2019, the trial begins afresh in the Port Elizabeth High Court, and then on the 21st of August 2024, the Eastern Cape High Court in Gqeberha dismissing an application by Omotoso to have evidence deemed inadmissible. And this is in part some of the evidence that would have been tabled there. And then as you look at this particular matter, a number of witnesses have taken the stand. Today, the NPA coming under scrutiny as well, as of course it's the 2nd of April 2025. He's now been found not guilty by the High Court in Gqeberha, and that's him and his two co-accused. A litany of charges that he's been facing. We've seen even his wife at some point attending this particular trial, members of his church also in support there. So let's bring in Lerato Fekisi, who is joining us now. Lerato, of course, this is, a big development, particularly when you listen to some of what the survivors have had to say. But I'm keen to find out, how have the members of Timothy Omotoso's church reacted to the news?
Well, a very good evening to you. They were absolutely elated as soon as judgment was passed. Zukiswa, Sulani, both literally kneeled down and Omotoso started praying, and so did the members of the church, literally inside court, lifted up their hands, praying and saying, "Thank you, God." Then they all tried to rush to Omotoso, who was still on the stand, and they tried to hug him and hold him, screaming out, "We love you, Papa. Well done, Papa. God is so good, Papa." And Papa referring to their spiritual father, who they call Omotoso. And outside was just elation, where there was music playing, members of JDI dancing, singing, saying, "Thank you, God, we're being vindicated. Our man of God is free. Papa can go free now. God has answered our prayers." So absolute elation. They then drove down to the Jesus Dominion International Church, which is in the main street of Gqeberha, and even there they held a service. And as we walked in, although we're not allowed to go completely in, it was elation and prayers of thanksgiving, saying that, you know what, God has answered their prayers because they're men of God and their co-accused have gone free.
Lerato, a visibly shaken Cheryl Zondi, just giving her statement post the proceedings. Let's speak about that moment and what some of those who were supporting her had to say.
Absolutely heartbreaking what Cheryl Zondi had to say, and interesting what she said, that she was there this afternoon not just for herself but for many victims who sacrificed their time and their lives to put their lives on the forefront, to come out and state what allegedly happened, when some of them, Mungi, were only 13 and 14 years old. And she says, throughout the past 8 years they've faced a lot of public scrutiny. She said that you'd walk down the street and people would call you names, people would call you someone that spoke against the man of God, and she was snubbed upon, her and many other victims, other witnesses in this case. So she was saying it's been a tough 8 years, and to get to a finality of this, where now, after facing so much backlash from social media, from people of JDI, from the general public about coming forward and saying that this man of God that they call a man of God has allegedly raped them or sexually assaulted them, was a disgrace. And she says she's had to face that. And she said, she went on to say, the painful part about him being released is not that they haven't been vindicated, which they were wanted, but that her fear is that other young women will then become victims, as they allege they were under his protection under his care many years ago. We also spoke to the CRL's chairperson, Sitho, who also spoke about just her disappointment with how this case has been handled, saying that the NPA has to go back to the drawing board, that it cannot be that Judge Skuman hampered hard on the loopholes of the state's case, speaking about the involvement of former State Prosecutor Gqeberha and how we really compromised this case by suborning warning the witnesses to commit perjury and then having evidence to prove that he did. And then also going on to state, as I quote what the judge said, at how the judgment, the cross-examination by the state was a disaster. She said that she couldn't believe herself or believe what she saw when the state was given 9 days to do cross-examination, all the three accused, and they only used the morning session for Omotoso, which she says was just absolutely absurd for someone who had 32 charges facing at that time, and they only used 2 days to do cross-examination to people that had so many charges, saying that this was the ample time for the state to really try and find loopholes in the state, the witness, the accused case, and they failed to do that, saying that the cross-examination is an important part of any case, and the state had the ample time now to really go hamper hard on what the defense has been trying to put forward, and they failed to do that. He said because of those two things, the state has failed in this case, and that's why Omotoso and his two co-accused went out free.
And when you listen to, the judge really just describing how disastrous this performance by the NPA was, even, pointing to the fact that there may have even be some evidence that they did not even, interrogate hard as far as this matter is concerned. But one wonders, has the NPA said anything at all, especially because they're on trial here? You do have a number of people who are still saying that they need to speak out about where did they fall short in their view, and what happens next.
We spoke to the NPA spokesperson, the Eastern Cape, and he did admit that the NPA did fall short in certain instances, that if anything they're going to go back and review the judgment and are possibly going to appeal it, but saying that a lot of work still needs to be done by the NPA, and they need to go back to the drawing board and see where they went wrong and what they can do better, and then they're going to try going forward perhaps to appeal this case and see then what the way forward is.
All right, Lerato, it'll be interesting to see then if they do appeal it, and if they do, with the docket and everything else, that the information that's currently before them, some legal analysts doubt that maybe it might even, result in some kind of success. But let's see then how they begin to then worm their way or even speak their way out of this one. That is SABC News reporter Lerato Fekisi speaking to us there from Gqeberha. This is post that particular judgment there in the Timothy Omotoso matter. He's now been acquitted, much to the dismay of a number of survivors, and of course the NPA really being the big one here. A lot of people watching to see how do they begin then to act on what has transpired in court.